Okay, in this example, we're going to do payroll, and we're going to use the if statement to determine the non-overtime, or what we refer to as standard time, and the overtime. In the United States, any time over 40 hours is billed as overtime, which is time and a half. So we're going to use a if statement that's going to calculate the non-overtime hours, and then another if statement that's going to determine the overtime hours. So we'll start with the non-overtime. So in this instance, we want to look for those people that have worked less than or equal to 40 hours. So we'll take the B5, that's the number of hours that this person has worked, and we're going to see if it's less than or equal to 40 hours. If it is less than or equal to 40 hours, meaning it's true, then we are going to just put in those hours, B5. Now, if they've worked more than 40 hours, then they're only going to get paid for 40 hours at normal time. So then we'll just put in 40. So we'll hit enter, and then we'll just copy this down. And what we're going to be looking at are these two people here and these three people. So they have worked over 40 hours. So they're going to only get 40 hours of regular time at their normal hourly rate. So then they will be getting, we now need to calculate for them. We're going to do it for everybody, obviously, but especially for them, because they're getting paid some time of overtime. So for example, Ruth is going to get 12 hours of overtime. So we'll do, again, equal if, and the logic test. This time we want to look for which of those hours, or these employees, who have worked more than 40 hours. So this would be for greater than 40. So then we need to determine how many of those hours over 40 are overtime. So then we take B5 and we subtract 40, because they've already gotten that for their regular time. Otherwise, if they haven't worked over 40 hours, then they don't get any overtime. So that will be 0. So again, to look at this equation, we are looking for those folks who have worked over 40 hours. They are going to get overtime. Now, they're not going to get 40 hours of overtime unless they worked 80 hours. So here we want to determine how many hours they actually have worked. So we take the hours they've worked and subtract 40, because this 40 is already being taken into consideration here in the non-overtime slot. So let me close this parenthesis. And again, we're only a few folks are actually qualifying for this. So again, I'm just going to highlight those few cells or few rows where they have actual overtime. And you can see that we've calculated their overtime. So that Ruthie worked 52 hours, so she gets 12 hours. Bella's worked 47, so she gets 7 hours. So in the non-overtime, just again talk about this, we're just looking for those hours that are less than 40. And then we put those in. So anybody who's less than 40, so for instance, Margot, we'll just put her hours in. If they've worked more than 40 hours, then they get 40 hours of standard time. So that's how this formula is working. So now we're going to do gross. This is going to take their non-overtime hours and multiply it by their hourly rate. And then it's going to add it to, add it to their overtime times their hourly rate times 1.5, because they get 1.5 times. So we will start, and I'm putting in parentheses just so I can separate both the overtime and non-overtime. So this will be D5 times C5, which is the standard rate. And then we're going to add this to the overtime times hourly rate times 1.5. Now Margot should only get the 33 times 11, which is 363. So let's just copy this down. Okay, so who should get overtime pay is Ruthie and Vela and Mario and Peter and Kelsey. So this is where that second formula took over. So again, why I did this is I wanted to separate this. Technically, the parentheses are not necessary. It would do multiplication and multiplication, but I wanted to separate this. The first set of parentheses is calculating the non-overtime. The second set of parentheses is calculating the actual amount that's just the overtime. And that is using both if statements and a little bit of complex equations or formulas to create overtime and non-overtime pay. So that is that.